50 years of US Peace Corps, 10 years of them in the Republic of Estonia. I am very pleased to welcome also the Deputy Chiefs of Mission of the embassies of Latvia and Lithuania here, who were amongst our regional partners when the Peace Corps was established in this region. But the stars of our event here today are, of course, our Peace Corps volunteers, along with their Estonian hosts, both present and those who are not here with us today. And a special welcome goes out to all of you who have assembled here with us. I would like to just read off the names of the US Peace Corps volunteers to remind you who they are and where they were. There was Scott Deal in Tartu County, Jerry Worth in Rakvere, Denise Worth in Kuressaare, Robert Oitjen at the Elva Secondary School, Jeff Sargent in Rapla County, Robert Doughton in Kohtla-Järve, Liz Parsons-Lentz in Kivijärvi. has a little wiggly. Liz Blair was a Peace Corps Baltics nurse. And then we have the great pleasure of having two members of our embassy team who were not here in Estonia in the Peace Corps, but served elsewhere in the Peace Corps during their time. And that's Sharon Russell Norberg, who is married to the chief of our political economic chief. Sharon is right back there and helped organize this event today. She was a volunteer in Poland. And Leanne Howard, I don't know if Leanne is here with us today, she was a volunteer in Jamaica. Thank all of you for your service and with deep appreciation from both the American people and, if I may, for a moment also for our Estonian hosts. Today we remember then President Kennedy's timeless call for action in 1961. Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. Scores of Americans heeded that call and many joined the Peace Corps. Over 165,000 Americans have since served as volunteers in 135 countries. As of 2002, when the Peace Corps commemorated its 41st anniversary, there were nearly 7,000 volunteers still actively serving in 70 countries around the world. Estonia and its neighbors Latvia and Lithuania were the first to invite the Peace Corps to come and to work together in their transition efforts after these countries breathed freedom again for the first time after decades of illegal occupation. In February of 1992, then Vice President Quayle signed agreements with each country establishing Peace Corps programs. In June and July of 1992, the first Peace Corps trainees arrived in Tallinn and Tartu for Estonia, in Ogre in Latvia, and Vilnius. They were the very first Peace Corps volunteers to come to the newly liberated countries. Over the course of 10 years, volunteers assisted in the fields of English education, small business and non-governmental organization development, and entrepreneurial training. In Estonia and the surrounding Baltic region, volunteers taught English to over 66,000 students and assisted over 21,000 business people and NGO personnel in developing their financial and management skills. Here in Estonia, 177 volunteers served in 64 towns and villages, forging lasting relationships with the best friends America has ever had. But just as Estonia was an eager partner in Peace Corps assistance 19 years ago, so Estonians today provide support for others in Europe and around the world. From the Eastern Partnership Program to support for governmental capacity building in the Middle East, Estonia has shown that it can give as good as it gets. Our joint Peace Corps experience serves as a lasting example of the enduring partnership between the United States and Estonia and the common values that drive not only our societies, but our combined approach to the whole world community. So with that, and with your permission and your forbearance, Palju õnne sünnipäevaks Ameerika Ühendriikide Rahukorpus. mål on au anda sönne esti vabarigi presidentile.
Tere päevast! But since I'm in the US Embassy, I'll speak in English. I'm old enough, actually, to remember the announcement of the Peace Corps in 1961. I was 7 years old, but even then I was already interested in all things relating to foreign affairs and politics. And I remember asking my father if this mean that there'd be Peace Corps volunteers going to Estonia, and he said, no. No, and then he explained why and everything, but in any case, I remember that, and that discussion we had, and as part of my sort of political education, why it was that the United States would not be sending people to Estonia. I was 7, so I wasn't that quite aware of things, but it's interesting because 30 years after the announcement of the Peace Corps program, someone finally figured out what it was, and that was Joseph Nye, and he started talking about soft power. And in fact, Joseph Nye's book on soft power, somewhere 92, 93 or so, if I recall correctly, actually laid out the theoretical framework for what I think is something that we all ought to think about much more. The person who introduced you said that promoting American values. I'm not sure those are American values that the Peace Corps promotes, but rather the values of the liberal democratic or liberal democracies the world over. And in fact, those values that have to do with rule of law and free and fair elections and observation of human rights. I mean, those are fundamental values that we all adhere to, and that make countries successful. I mean, I said gave a speech about 2 weeks ago where I paraphrased the opening line to Anna Karenina, where I said that all successful countries have reformed alike. Each unsuccessful country finds its own excuses. And I think those fundamental values, which have been promoted very successfully by the Peace Corps over the past 50 years, are in fact those very same values that today make Estonia a success. And in fact, I would say that while you kindly mentioned the efforts that we make here on the part of Estonia, that really what is missing today in Europe is an analogous program. And Estonia clearly, as a small country, is not capable of putting out its own Peace Corps to send around the world so everyone can learn Estonian. This may not be, we may want to do that, but I think. On the other hand, and I've thought about this for a long time, I think just as I believe the European Union needs something like a National Endowment for Democracy, which is a congressionally funded organization that assists countries in developing democratic institutions and does it very well, and I actually tried to get something like that going in the European Parliament about 7 years ago, but to deaf ears, because it was, quote, an American thing. We had big fights over that. But so too, I think that within the European Union, we should look at good examples of how things are done. There's a wonderful book by a French historian, philosopher named Rémi Brague. He's written a book called The Eccentric Culture about Europe, in which he says the fundamental difference of European culture actually comes from the Roman Empire, which differed from all previous and other societies in that it was willing to take good ideas from other people. Every other civilization before the Roman Empire always thought that whatever anyone else was doing was a priori inferior. There are some cultures that to this day believe that whatever anyone else is doing is a priori inferior. But the Romans were very bright, and they said, look, the Greeks have done all these great things, let's borrow their ideas. borrowed their architecture, borrowed their literature, borrowed their philosophy. And he said that, well, this is what Europe's strength comes from following this same paradigm of the Romans, in which if there's a good idea out there, let's do it, let's borrow it. So what if we didn't invent it? And I think that was, and I think the provincialism that we occasionally see, that I encountered when I suggested setting up a national endowment for democracy in the European Parliament, I mean, analogously funded by the European Parliament, so as not to be to be a broad-based institution. That kind of provincialism that said, no, that's an American thing, is something we need to get over. And I think it would be very much in our interest, especially as a small country that can't send 170,000 Estonian language teachers around the world, that in fact our experiences with creating a rule of law-based society, free and fair elections and respect for human rights, that in fact, and with the experience of a lot of other countries in Europe that have gone through that, that have done it by themselves, is something that is a key asset that we should be using in our own soft power. Especially because, to be honest, you know, not all, I mean, right, and I think that the Peace Corps experience differs very much from a lot of the other assistance that countries like mine received in the 90s, which was we had these kind of four-day advisors who would fly in on business class for a Monday, and Thursday evening would fly back to wherever they came from, and they would bill their government, you know, $1,000 a day or 1,000 euros a day, and then later on the government would say, look, we spent this much money giving you foreign aid, when in fact it was all money into the hands or into the pockets of advisors that in fact didn't always dispense the best advice. Whereas the Peace Corps, people came here, worked for a pittance, took 2 years out of their lives to in fact do something, and lived in the community and established genuine bridges and bonds with people here. I was telling the ambassador before that maybe some of those bonds are too strong. We have not looked at the trade balance yet, but how many Peace Corps workers moved to Estonia and how many Estonian spouses moved out of Estonia. But nonetheless, I think it was a very worthwhile experience all around. So I'd like to congratulate the Peace Corps on its 50th birthday. And I sincerely believe that the European Union should be thinking much in the same lines and get over its provincialism in certain issues. Democracy is not an American thing. Thank you very much.